Hello everybody and welcome to JTV. So today I'm thrilled to be joined from Israel by 22-year-old Jewish and Israel activist Hila Oz. She's from LA originally, and I first came across her. I think she was posting videos on TikTok, and I saw some pro-Israel activists post one of her videos, must have been about a year ago, and I was just so impressed by her energy, her level of knowledge and communication skills, which was both a combination of like getting across really powerful messages with done so in like a really entertaining way. And I immediately wanted to reach out to Hila, and I don't know if you remember, it must have been about a year ago, and she started making some fantastic videos for us, and now is on to other things in the world of Jewish activism. And I just thought it'd be a great idea to have a conversation with her so we could share with you, our audience, her really incredible story, and just to get to know Hila a little bit more, because she's an absolute powerhouse. So first of all, Hila, thank you so much for joining us all the way from Jerusalem.
Thank you so much for having me. It's nice to be back.
Great to have you here. So why don't we just start from the beginning? Why don't you tell us about your own personal story from your upbringing in LA County to today, and how your journey towards becoming an observant Jew and a Jewish and Israel activist, how that happened.
Okay, so I grew up in a place called Santa Clarita, which has like 3 Jews. I grew up going to public school. My parents are Israeli, so I was raised Masorati, traditional. So Judaism was always a big part of my family life and my home life, and I went to Camp Ramah and USY and stuff like that. But we weren't super observant. So I grew up going to public school, and I was surrounded by a lot of non-Jews and unfortunately, a lot of ignorance. And dealing with anti-Semitism from a really young age was very confusing. Already when you're like, elementary school, middle school, high school, you're trying to find yourself, and you're trying really hard to fit in with other people and to have this other thing, this Judaism, which automatically defines you as separate from your peers. It makes it even harder to, I guess, find your identity within your peers. So it's very hard for me. I think, especially like middle school, early high school, I really just decided to, unfortunately, like reject my Jewish identity. I just didn't want this other thing that made me different and made me weird. And, all the kids are celebrating Christmas, and, I don't know, it was just, I felt like if I could just get rid of all the things that make me different from everyone else, then I'll be accepted, and it'll be easier for me to like go through my school life, I guess. And that did not work. Anti-Semites are anti-Semites, whether or not you're observant. And, there's this interesting concept from like the Shemi Shmuel that basically like non-Jews cannot stand when Jews aren't being themselves, because every single person in the world needs to be themselves in order for the world to function, because we all have a portion here. And so there's this idea that even if you reject your identity, like everyone else is going to force you to accept it. Which I find very interesting. And I see as, a pattern throughout history that at the times of the greatest assimilation, that's when you have the largest waves of anti-Semitism, which kind of reinforces like, no, you're Jews, like get it through your head, you're Jews. And the best thing to do with that is to just accept our identity and love it and embrace it and do the most good we can with it, rather than say, I don't want to be, but it's not fashionable, et cetera, et cetera. So, I was dealing with a lot of anti-Semitism, and obviously being a preteen is like the worst. It's just awful. And I was an atheist for a while, and my final summer as a camper at Camp Ramah, which was 2014, I remember I just had this feeling that I was going to find God again, that this whole atheist thing wasn't working out for me, and I just wanted to find him. And through the help of, the staff at my summer camp and the environment that it provided, I was able to start believing in God again.
Just before you continue, I'm curious, what kind of anti-Semitism did you experience?
Oh boy, so much. I remember like the earliest incident that I remember was in first grade. I was in the girls' bathroom. And there were these twins who like bullied me relentlessly. And I remember them saying like, which is so weird, Jewish people can't sing. I got a theater degree. I was always into singing and performing, and it was just like something they knew would bother me. But I remember them saying Jewish people can't sing. I was like 5 or 6 years old, and just being like, what does that even mean? You know, from that to physical attacks, to Holocaust jokes, to people throwing money at me, you know, throwing pennies or taking money from me and being like, oh, like, of course you're mad, you're a Jew. Just, yeah. And then in high school, this is like after I, you know, started accepting my identity more. I remember my senior year, someone keyed a swastika on the side of my car, which was like the biggest thing, like pre-college, I guess. And I didn't even notice it until like my dad pointed it out because it was on the passenger side of my car, and he was like, "What is that?" And I saw it, and I was like, I didn't even know what to do about it.
And I'm curious, how did this make? I know I'm cutting in a lot into your story, so forgive me, but how did these incidents make you relate to being Jewish? As you said, I think earlier, part of you just wanted to just shed it off, this Jewish thing.
Yeah, I think once I decided to take it on again, it was, so the summer of 2014, I'm sure you remember, there was a war in Israel, and I think that in addition to my personal spiritual journey, really solidified my Jewish identity within me. I grew up Israeli. Israel has always been, you know, no matter where I was in my spiritual journey, Israel was always a constant. And I always loved this land, and I always, you know, was taught, you know, to defend it and the history of it. And I'd come here all the time, and it was just home, no matter what. And so, you know, in hearing the stories of those 3 boys who were murdered by terrorists, and I mean, they really kept us updated on the whole situation. And then that rockets were firing, and I knew my family was there and my friends were there, and I didn't know what to do. And I remember, you know, just hearing all the other like stuyot that everyone was complaining about, and, you know, with other minor injustices, not that, you know, that shouldn't be dealt with, but I remember just thinking like, who cares? Like, there's a war happening and I can't do anything. And I think that really just solidified within me that like, this is my people's history. This is my people's story, that like we are under attack, and hiding doesn't do anything. We have to fight back. We have to do something about it.
So what happened after that?
So I finished high school. I decided to go to community college because I was able to transfer after only a year to UCLA. I started at UCLA. I dealt with my fair share of anti-Semitism there. Because I was a transfer, my junior year, was my first year at UCLA. And that winter break, we went to Poland. And I remember just, my mom's side is Polish. My dad is like fully like Sephardi Israeli. Like his family's been in Yerushalayim for 9 or 10 generations, something crazy like that, hundreds of years. But on my mom's side, I'm Polish, and I never really related to that side of my family because it seemed like, oh, that was in the past and Israel's our future. And I remember just being there, and it was such a life-changing experience to see the camps. And on my 19th birthday, we went to Majdanek, which is completely intact. You can go inside the gas chambers, and we sat inside, and we were singing like Shema Yisrael, and like, you can see, like, this is like very morbid, you can see the scratch marks on the walls. It's like cement walls. It was very, and I remember seeing, there was a girl on my trip who grew up like modern Orthodox. And, you know, this is without any judgment, because it was, you know, it's a very difficult trip to be on, and we're all on our own journey. But I remember she was like, you know, how can God do this? I can't believe in a God that would do this. And I remember as I was watching her, you know, explore that, and, you know, I don't know where she is now, and I hope she's okay in whatever path she's on. But I remember thinking, like, if this measure of evil can exist, then this measure of good can exist too. And we have to find that measure of good and do it. And this is like, so I think this is kind of whatever. I grew up in LA. So I remember my takeaway, or one of my takeaways from this trip, was I no longer wanted to get a nose job, which sounds like super superficial, but for me, it was a really big step in, accepting who I was as someone of Middle Eastern heritage, someone of Jewish heritage, and someone with different features than, everyone else who I went to school with, which was super white and Christian. And I remember just, coming back and being like, everyone's beautiful in their own way, but like, why would I want to look different than what I am? Why would I want to look specifically like the people who tried to kill me? So I took that home with me, and I was like, I guess, on fire with inspiration, but not yet to the point where I was actually like becoming more observant, I guess. And that summer I went on Birthright with my older sister, Adi. And after that, we went to Berlin for a week. And that was kind of another eye-opening experience. I mean, we were kind of there just to vacation, but we could still see, the rise in anti-Semitism there. We could see how people were mistreating monuments to the Shoah. There's a beautiful monument to the murdered Jews of Europe, and it's outside, and it's these different blocks of like different heights. And it's this really, to walk through it, it really gives you this emotional reaction. And then people are using it to take like these Instagram photos and like looking really sexy and like posing and super inappropriate and running on top of the monument. And
I've often felt in those cases, they just don't know what it is.
Yeah, except for the signs all around that said like the monument to the murdered Jews of Europe. And I remember my sister going up to them and being like, hey, this is for all the Jews who were murdered, like knock it off. And I was like, yes, indeed. And I was like really proud that, she's my older sister and she was really fighting the fight. And then again, we were at the Jewish Museum in Berlin, and people were, again, taking inappropriate photos in another monument to the Shoah. And I remember the first floor of the Jewish Museum is like all about the Shoah, and it's this beautiful, like all of the horror. It was like really well done, it was really, you could see how much time and effort and thought was put into it. And I was like, this is a really good exhibit. And then you go to the second floor and it's like, but the occupation in Palestine and those Jews conquered the land and stole and this and that. And I'm like literally watching them. It felt a lot like, what we did to the Jews was bad. Okay. But like those dirty Jews, look at what they're doing in Palestine. And I'm like, it was just so not only false, but inappropriate. And it was just taking away from what they did. And it seemed to be a tactic to kind of divert blame.
I heard a great line, I can't remember who said it, that Europe never forgave the Jews for the Holocaust, meaning it made them feel guilty towards the Jews.
Yeah. And I'm sure, especially being in Germany, where that's like the center of it all, but it was, my sister and I were fuming. And so I came back and I was just dying to get back to Israel. I just knew I had to get back to Israel. And about 2.5 weeks after I got home, my campus rabbi, Rabbi Naftali Hanfling, posted about the Akiva trip, which is a 2-week trip led by Rabbi Ben-Zion Klatzko that comes to Israel. And basically in the mornings, you learn at Esha Torah in the Old City, and then in the afternoons, you travel around Israel. And so I went on this trip. I got on the plane back to Israel a month after I came home. And there was just something about it where it just clicked. And I was like, I knew before that, I believe in the Torah. I believe that Judaism's right. I believe in all these things, but I just didn't think that I had to do anything about it. And I was just on that trip and I was like, okay, if it's all true, we're gonna do it. We're gonna take it on. So that first Shabbos was in Sfat, and I kept my first Shabbos, and I've been, thank God, keeping it ever since. And after the trip, I went to Neve for the first time, which is a seminary in Jerusalem. I went for a month, and then I came home and started my senior year at UCLA. And then I was a Frum person.
And then now you come back to Israel.
Yeah, thank God. Yeah, so once Neve reopened from the pandemic, like when in August it reopened of 2020, and I came back for about a year. And then now I live here. I'm in the process of making Aliyah. I like to joke, there's an idea that the only way to acquire your share in Eretz Yisrael, because you can't own the land, the only way to acquire your share in Eretz Yisrael is through suffering, and Misrat Panim is the way where it's the means through which we acquire our share. But B'ezrat Hashem, soon I'll be registered as a citizen, and yeah.
That's really incredible. You know, it really is amazing. As part of one of the great privileges of doing something like this, meeting all kinds of people with amazing Jewish stories, and it's amazing how many people's Jewish journey has been like radically shifted after going to Poland, including my own. And it's that exact thing you mentioned. Like, we just see the level of intensity and insanity towards trying to commit acts of evil and destroy the Jews. And you know, I was listening to a really interesting talk recently about how we can make sense of evil. Why would God create a world full of evil? And one of the parts that's really important to remember is that God literally hates evil, and He hates it. And there's this concept of God suffering when someone else suffers. In fact, even more so, because He is the ultimate empath. And so, you know, it's like when God's at the burning bush and talks to Moses, and He says, "I will be that will I be." He's saying, don't think I'm not suffering with them, and I'm going to be suffering with them through every single future exile. So one of the questions that was asked in this talk, so why would He do that to Himself, all this pain and suffering? But one of the interesting points it made is that evil does have something which goodness doesn't have, which is good. Good has something that evil doesn't have as well. Good has meaningfulness. Doing good is meaningful, but evil has something that good doesn't yet have, which is passion. And a kind of insane intensity and drive, and we saw that. I mean, we've been literally knocked out time and time again by the passion and drive that evil has. And part of the idea of this concept is that God says, whatever's in that evil, I want that passion for goodness, for godliness. And part of our job is to be insanely good and do insanely good. And so if we think a job or a project is so wild and insane, well, look at what Hitler tried to do. That was completely insane. Why can't we be insane, but for the opposite?
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I feel, but right before Pesach, there's this custom where you burn your chametz, you burn all your leaven products. And this past year, I was at this chametz burning, and there was a rabbi there, Rabbi Yonah Aryeh Refson, who was on Neve campus, and he was saying that it's not about destroying the negativity in your life, it's about setting it on fire. So all of these, in Hebrew, an attribute, a character trait is called a midah, which is a measurement literally. And that's because that every single character trait has good within it in a certain measurement. So it's not about completely destroying anger, let's say. It's about setting it on fire. Okay, what's the good side of anger? And that, you know, I guess could be the anger of, let's say, the Maccabees, who saw injustice, and it was that holy anger that, you know, inspired them to fight back against the Greeks. Or, you know, laziness, set that on fire. Okay, sometimes you have to do self-care, you have to sit back and take care of yourself, and then you'll have the energy to move forward. So all these things can be elevated, and that's what we exist to do. We're not here to detach from the physical world per se, we're here to elevate it. So yeah, I really like that concept.